For 2022, I decided I wanted to put together sort of an ultimate volume of conversations for upcoming drummers and percussionists with some of the best people I've met in the industry since I've been playing music. So I hope that's what the next 12 days will bring us, is 12 different insights from all current active musicians from various spots in the entertainment world. Kicking us off is going to be my new worst friend, drummer for the Mountain Goats and Superchunk, and someone I've been listening to since middle school. Ladies and gentlemen, Jon Wurster.
Thank you so much for doing this, John. I'm humbled and honored that you said yes. Let's start there.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for always nice to be invited.
Right on, man. So the idea is I'm going to try to assemble a great group of drummers together and just find out where your spark came from. Like, where did you find out that music was like, this is my bag, this is my thing, and it's not going to go away?
Gosh, where did I, it's funny because I don't really come from a musical family. We had a piano in the house, but I recall my dad kind of plucking away on it maybe twice ever. So there wasn't really any music, I'm trying to think. My aunt played something, but that was it. Other than that, there was no musical aptitude other than, like the 2 inches of records that we had in the house when I was a kid. So it's very odd to me that I ended up doing what I have ended up doing, because not that there wasn't support, but it was just very out of the norm in my family to have an intense interest in music. So I'm trying to think like where that would have started. Probably just from hearing AM radio. I grew up outside of Philadelphia, maybe 35 miles northwest, very much like the Mennonite farm country. So also not a very conducive atmosphere. No. So but to answer your question, I probably just saw bands playing on American Bandstand on TV, or the odd clip of a band playing on television. But the big thing was probably seeing when I was in elementary school. Every now and then you would either go to the junior high school, or the junior high school stage band would come to to play for you at your school. And that's probably the first place I ever saw drum set up close, like in the wild.
Okay.
And when you're a kid and you see a drum set, it's like a hot rod almost. So it's like a car or something.
You can do that.
Yeah. So it's by far the most visually riveting instrument for like just for a child. So I'm sure that's what drew me in. And thank God I had parents that were supportive and didn't just go, oh no, there's no way we're having drum, because it's such a commitment for parents to. Yeah, it's so loud and you're so bad.
Oh, for
so long.
Yeah. So sort of like a school pep rally type deal.
That sort of thing, or you would just go to the junior high school for like a play or something, and then while you were filing in, and just kind of to entertain the kids, the 7th or 8th grade band would play like what was the song they play? String of Pearls, which is just like a very basic kind of shuffle. And so it was just kind of captivating that like a kid was playing those. And when I was a kid, there were a couple instances of children playing the drums that I saw, like on the Partridge Family or something. Obviously, that's Hal Blaine playing that stuff, but it was an 8-year-old boy,
faking
trying to play. Yeah, and there was this duo called the Keane Brothers. I think it was Kean, and it was two brothers, and one was like a genius keyboard player, and the other brother played drums, and they would be on like the Dinah Shore show or the Mike Douglas show. They made records completely lost to history, but I think maybe that was my first inkling that, oh wow, I could.
This is a thing I can do. He's
a kid, and I could probably do that,
right?
You know. And then I took lessons. Not terribly long. Maybe from like 12 to maybe 14 or so. So it wasn't long. So I got like the little, the basics down.
Theory and understanding.
Yeah, a little bit.
Note. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I immediately started playing in bands when I was around 14.
Yeah.
And I just kind of learned playing with people, and also along with records. That was the big thing for me. Once I figured out, I can play along with this Graham Parker album, with these good headphones that kind of block out everything.
Yeah, you can hear the music while still.
Yes.
Playing. Yeah.
That changed my world, definitely. Like that was like, oh wow, I can learn a lot.
Yeah.
Doing this.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have a similar story. Nirvana's Unplugged.
Mm-hmm.
That was mine.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's where I learned.
Right.
Because it's such simple stuff happening on that show, but so foundational.
Oh yeah.
That's everything.
Yeah.
So when did you get your were you guys like road warriors with the Superchunk and stuff, and just sort of built up your fan base over time?
Yeah. I joined the band right before their second album came out.
Mm-hmm.
So this is September of '91.
Okay.
And so when I joined, they already had a little bit of a buzz going. Like they were a very hip band in like the underground indie circles. And so we pretty much just toured and made records, for the next 10 years.
Just winning over.
Yeah. And so but by around 2001 we put out a record a week after 9/11 and still toured, and it just sucked. It was terrible. But so after that we kind of went on hiatus. But to answer your question, yeah, we just kind of killed it for 10 years.
Win people over night after night.
Trying to, yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever do any sort of like drum corps, or have you ever seen that, like the really proficient drum corps and like the rudimental percussion?
I was in school band. I always forget that I was in school band for a couple years in junior high school, not in high school at all, but so got a little bit of that like exposure to it anyway. And I think we marched twice.
Right on.
I think I walked and played twice. But beyond that, the closest I probably got to that was learning 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover by Steve Gadd. You know what I mean?
It's an important one though. That 5-stroke roll or whatever it's called. Yeah. So who blew besides besides the pep rally? I've read stuff and I've seen that you say Steve Jordan is sort of your guy.
Yeah. I before I was in Superchunk, I'll try to make this as concise as I can because it's kind of convoluted. When I was 19, I auditioned for a band in North Carolina. So I was living outside of Philly. I was playing in like an underground band called Psychotic Norman, and we would play with Suicidal Tendencies and the Minutemen and De Kreutzen and bands like that. But I got this opportunity to fly down to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where my brother was living. He had a track scholarship to Wake Forest, which is in Winston-Salem. So this is 1980, this is January of '86 now, and Psychotic Norman was kind of on the rails. We had a single out, but that was kind of it. And he said, my brother called and said, this band is looking for a drummer. And it was very much not what I was playing. It was like a very much influenced by the Stones and the band, and very kind of roots rock Dylan, which I did like when I was younger, but by now I'm into like Husker Du and the Replacements and
a little more
stuff like that. Yeah. And so, but my dad bought me a ticket to go down and try out, and I got in the band. So I decided to do that, and 2 months later we got signed by Clive Davis to Arista Records.
Whoa!
Yeah, it was nuts. I was 19, and like my dream had already come true.
Yeah,
a year before I said I was gonna. I think when I was like 16, I said I'll give myself till I'm 20.
Right.
And somehow it worked.
Good timing.
Yeah, but that was a disaster. We all the red tape that goes with that, and then some. So we only got halfway into making a record. We did it at Ardent with Jim Dickinson in Memphis, and that was great. It was right after he had done Pleased to Meet Me by the Replacements.
Oh boy.
And same studio. And so that experience on Arista is kind of like ground on for, it felt like it was a decade, but I'm sure it was only like 2 years or so. But so finally we get dropped without even finishing a record. And we got this publishing deal. And the woman who was our point person there said, I want to get you in the studio with this Steve Jordan.
Okay.
And at this point, Steve was best known as the drummer in the Letterman band, Mach 1. Played with the Blues Brothers on that record. A lot of stuff like that. And he was becoming a record producer, and he had just gotten off the road with Keith Richards on the tour for his first solo record, which Steve played on and co-produced. Talk is Cheap. And so we find ourselves, it was the week the wall came down in
oh, wow.
Germany. That's my main memory of placing it. So we got to go to the Hit Factory in Times Square, and Nico Bolas was the engineer, and Nico had just done Neil Young's Freedom album, which has that what was the hit? Rockin' the Free World.
Rockin' Free World, yeah.
And so basically to prepare for this session we were doing with him, basically we were going to record 5 songs at the Hit Factory in Times Square. Nico Bolas is the engineer.
Right.
I'm using the drum kit that Steve played with Neil Young on SNL.
Right.
Like this very vintage, I think a 28-inch bass drum.
Oh boy.
Great like hand painted head. And so basically he was such a great influence in that he never told me what to play, but you just kind of soak up his thing. And like we'd go over to his apartment at, like really late at night, and he had like a whole floor of a building, and had a cool little drum kit and some amps, and we would just play through the songs. And I don't recall him ever even sitting down at the drums like to say, try this. It was always just like
just watching. Yeah.
And when we actually it came time to record, he would just stand in the middle of the floor, and we're all kind of spread out, and he would just play a tambourine just to kind of like keep us in time. And if he was like grooving, it was good. And sure. And so from then on, I kind of used him, and also Charlie Drayton, who was also in the Keith Richards band and now plays drums with Bob Dylan. I really loved how those guys played. Like Charlie's the drummer on I Touch Myself by the Divinyls, and Love Shack by B-52s, and Merry Go Round by the Replacements. Very identifiable sounds,
yeah,
but really stripped down, like just pretty much almost like Phil Rudd kind of, but with like a bunch of swing and
Just groove.
that sort of thing. So I really sort of tried to. That informed a lot of my drumming. So now we're at like 89. I joined Superchunk, and that's kind of how I'm playing. So it was a very odd mix of like this kind of that kind of drumming, and then this band that's like early Soul Asylum, Husker Du kind of thing. So, but I was lucky that I had those both of those things in my palette, so to speak. You know what I mean? So I got really lucky, once like people would start to ask me to play on records that weren't punk rock, I did have that kind of stuff in my quiver. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All right. Got to ask you, the Pleased to Meet Me. I heard that thing when I was maybe 12 years old. What's your favorite track?
My favorite, God, there's so many.
I know.
The two that come to mind first are Nevermind, which I think has Chris's greatest drum fill in it right at the very end, and Alex Chilton. Nice. But I remember we actually met Jim at our management's office, and they managed the replacements also.
Right.
And I remember sitting in their office listening to early mixes of those songs, and I think still the best sounding song is it's one I don't even like that much. It's called I Don't Know. Like that was I remember like that was the fullest kind of
mix.
Yeah. But that's my favorite record of theirs, I think, and it was really cool to just be exactly where they did it, and you could see the little vomit stains on the wall that are so legendary.
Using that kit too, that must just kind of elevates your game when you're in there,
Yes, that was a different kit. This was probably the same kit that Chris used on Pleased to Meet Me, though. And there's a very interesting thing in that session was that Jim had done this with Chris. I guess Chris and I do this too, where most of what my sound is from the waist up. You know what I mean? Like a lot of that, I could use some work on my feet. Sure. And I guess Chris was the same way. So to make Chris really think about what he was doing with the bass drum, they got one of these industrial, like a big cardboard vat that you would put whatever chemicals in, like chemical cleaners. Industrial. So it's like a giant 22-inch round thing, and so they cut a hole in the bottom. So now you've got this, and they put it in front of the bass drum. So now you've got this,
wall
50-inch deep bass drum, and so he did that with me also, and it really does make you
add some poop or something to it.
Oh, that, and also it's so in your face that you can't not just think about what your foot is doing. So it was a really good idea, even if it wasn't even used in the final blend. It's a great psychological thing.
The Motown trick was sort of similar, but they would just kind of cover the bass drum in a blanket.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe you don't get the length, for the resonance, but you got a little bit more of the chest thump.
Yeah. And that room, I'm not sure if you've ever been in that room in Motown. It's pretty small, so like you really wonder like how on earth did they? There's not much separation, but everybody I'm sure just knew.
Sure,
how hard to hit, how. So it's those guys were true
at that level
geniuses. Yeah.
Wow. Nightclub Jitters.
Yes.
Off the it's the different feel on that record, but for me, that's just the one that was like the whole record's mind blowing.
Yeah,
but that something about that relaxed.
That might even be the only take, the first take.
Really?
My understanding is Tommy requested like an upright bass. It might have been one of those like newfangled,
electric sticks,
something like that.
Yeah.
Never played one before, and Jim said he was just like immediately could play it, and so that might be the first take of that.
Wow.
of that song. And we did that record on the same board that they did Pleased to Meet Me. And it was at this time where Dickinson talks about it a lot in interviews about Pleased to Meet Me. It was like an early, like really good sampler called the Fairlight.
Okay.
And it was like a spaceship sort of
Sure.
thing. It cost like $1 million. Somehow Arden bought one of these things. And so it was like a very early sampler. And my understanding is a lot of Pleased to Meet Me is Jim just kind of like cut and pasted things. Like a lot of the weird sounds you hear are just kind of like flown in. So he and the engineer was, I think, a guy named John Hampton. They were really good at like performing surgery on this stuff, but with no click. I remember him say, because we were playing to a pretty rigid click on our stuff. Yeah. And I remember saying to him, did the replacements use a click? And he goes, they would have laughed me out of the room if I suggested that.
That's gonna take 6 more months. Are you kidding?
Yeah. But Chris is an amazing drummer, and he was a big influence too around that time. And he's for my money, like in terms of like punk drumming on Stink, there's hardly anybody better than him. He was so good, so good.
Have you kept up with the sort of punk rock thing?
Like what? Like new bands, or
like the pop punk thing. As a drummer, especially, there's two records that really, from the drumming thing. There's a band called Lagwagon. They're from
sure, I remember them. Yeah. Who was the drummer? I don't remember. I never saw them, I don't think.
At the time it was this guy Derek Plord, I believe his name was.
I do know this. I don't know this world at all, but I have the documentary on
the Fat Records thing?
Fat Records, yeah. So that's my exposure to it. Yeah.
The Duh record that they put out.
Okay.
It's, if you haven't heard it, it's incredible. Like the chops he had in that and how fast that is. And then the other one would be Brooks Wackerman, when he played, I think his first record with Bad Religion,
right?
Process of Belief, maybe it's called.
Yeah,
this dude's just amazing. What it's become from,
right?
The humblest of beginnings, I guess.
To me, the king of that is Bill Stevenson.
Yes, absolutely.
And
I can't get my head around it. But the energy that guy makes with the very little technique, like his touch. Oh,
he's super light now. Like it's very
and he can still pull it off.
Oh, that's probably my biggest influence in terms. Like when I joined Superchunk, I was kind of out of punk rock. Like I still liked a lot of it. I still like to listen to it, but I was playing in this band that sounded like, like the Rolling Stones at this point.
Sure.
So when I got back to Superchunk, like the record I kind of just practiced with a lot to get that back was Liveage, which is that first live Descendants record, because it's like Myage, it's just insane. Like that did not come easily to me at all. So I really had to work.
Did you mainline coffee or espresso to make that?
No. But then when I started. Oh, definitely. When I started playing with Bob Mould, we were doing a lot of Husker Du songs, and that's one of my favorite bands of all time. But I never really played along with those records. And Grant Hard was oh my God, those super fast rolls are insane. Like it took me forever to even like come close to that. So. Yeah, those are my guys.
Those are
and Gina Shock from the Go-Go's. Not a punk band, but like she was is still a huge influence. Really great.
She is on my list of drummers I'm dying to talk to. And she actually the other day was like, "What's it about?" Like, "Oh my God, finally!" So she might be one of the drummers on this thing.
Yeah,
I'm very excited about.
she's one of my big heroes for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
can you kind of expand on that?
Well, incredible foot.
Okay.
I actually wrote about this in a book that just came out. I don't think I have it here though. It's a book about punk rock drumming. It's called, what is it called?
The Forbidden Beat, is that it?
That's it. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So he asked me to write like the five, I think it was 5 songs that I practice to get ready for a tour. Like the ones that are for me are hard. They're probably not hard to most people, but one of the songs is We Got the Beat by the Go-Go's, because like I don't have a terribly like awesome bass drum foot.
Okay.
In terms of like power. So that's a song I'll play a lot because it's just constant gung, 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 you know? Yeah. So that's a big one for me. And she just like is super powerful, super, you know, her fills are awesome, really brutal Tom action, you know, like, so yeah, she's just great choices.
Musical, doesn't get in the way.
No, great, and became a really good songwriter too. Wrote she had her own band. They only made one record. Oddly, she had a band with Ellen DeGeneres' brother. Wow. And it was called House of Shock.
Okay.
And she was the guitar player and singer, and really good songs. And then she ended up co-writing a couple big hit songs, like one for maybe Miley Cyrus and one for someone else of that.
Really?
In that scene. Yeah. So.
Wow.
Way to go.
Not to get too nerdy with the drum thing, but you mentioned your foot is kind of a lighter foot. Do you play with your stool kind of way up in the air, or are you a little lower?
It depends, like what kind of injury I've got going. I've been really lucky. I don't have. I'm really healthy for the amount of touring that I do. Yeah. And so, it depends. Like I remember we played this thing. It was kind of like a tribute to Bob Mould.
Okay.
Poster right here. When was it? It was. There's no date on it. 2011.
Okay.
And so Jason Narducci and I, we play the bass and drums with Bob. We were kind of the core band for Bob. Bob played some songs, and then Britt Daniel played a song or two with us, and then Tad and Craig from the Hold Steady, Margaret Show.
Yeah.
And Grohl came out and played guitar and sang on like maybe like 5 or 6 Husker Du songs, and that was great. And it was funny because I thought I kind of sat low back then.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh yeah, because we switched on a song. I took his guitar and played guitar on a song, and he played the drums, and he just like got this thing to go like lower than I even imagined it could go. Yeah, it was just like, so I really can't do that anymore, just because of I only have. It's funny, as I've gotten older. Yeah, I only have like an hour.
Oh, okay.
And like 12 minutes left in
the job.
Like, in that, if it's at like an upright angle. So I just found, and this is kind of informed by Bill Stevenson and like Dave Lombardo a little bit, where I try to just kind of like, it's all in here now. Like it's not really, not the full kind of caveman.
No, I don't know how guys can keep that up for so long.
No, especially I'll be 56 on Halloween, so it's like it's all about, I don't know if ergonomics is the word, but it's like how can I sit where like nothing's gonna happen? So
extra expended energy and
yeah. And with the Mountain Goats, I sit higher than I used to, and I always like to kind of fool around with the angle of the snare drum.
Yeah.
So like a lot of times in the Mountain Goats, I've got it almost like at a Charlie Watts kind of Buddy Rich kind of pretty dramatic
Yeah.
tilt, because like if I got a little pain going in the elbow, it's like less of a movement that's needed. So there's a lot of that going on now.
That's deep, because I don't think a lot of people think of that. They'll just try to play through the pain or whatever. But
absolutely. And your body, like I noticed, like my body's like shrinking a little bit as I get, just because your muscle tone just kind of like evaporates a little bit, or it like recedes a little bit. So it's all just kind of very minor adjustments that I think I always thought I'd be playing at this age, but I didn't think I'd be doing it like this professionally still.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't really think about, there's going to be a lot of adjustments and things that are going to come up that you will just seem laughable at your, your hardcore 25-year-old self,
Anything. 3-hour show, no problem.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, other than being a super talented drummer who's been in some of my favorite bands in the world, you're also one of the funniest people.
Oh,
especially drummer-wise, that coming across some of your things, like that was one thing that really stood out to me, was your humor, and that you've also done some comedy writing. How did you get into that?
Through the back door. It's really interesting. I always loved comedy. I loved Second City TV when I was a kid, that sort of thing. Saturday Night Live, comedy album, Steve Martin. But it was never something like I really had aspirations for. And then I met Superchunk was playing a show. It was July of 91 with My Bloody Valentine and Pavement in New York. And this guy comes backstage who was a friend of the people in Superchunk. I just joined, so I didn't really know this guy at all. It was Tom Sharpling.
Oh.
And we just hit it off, and we became really good friends. And eventually Tom had a radio show on WFMU, and we talk on the phone so much that we kind of
like give and take.
Like this funny rapport, and we had these little scenarios we'd make up. And so one time we just decided to do this long form comedy call. So this is 97. And I called in as this guy who had written a rock reference book called Rock, Rot, and Rule. Just like really stupid concept.
Sure.
Guy was very, very ill-informed. But he's talking about this book.
The Michael Scott of rock and roll.
Yeah. And so these people that didn't know it was a joke, because there was no precedent for Tom having anything like this on his show,
right?
They thought it was real. So what followed was just like hours of people calling in to say how stupid I was, and I would just kind of like be a brick wall, like I wouldn't relent. And anyway, 3 years later, we put this thing out as a CD, called Rock, Rot, and Rule, and we'd give it to bands, because when you're touring, you just your ears are fried from playing, so you just want to hear like talking or something, if anything. And so we give it to like Guided by Voices, Sleater Kinney, and David Bazan, people like that, Spoon, and they would just kind of pass it around to other bands, and it just kind of became this little word of mouth thing. And then through that, I think David Cross got it, and then all these things kind of led to
people going, this guy's funny.
Yeah, people like who actually had jobs, kind of saying, would you want to try this? So I was still playing music this whole time, but like I was getting gigs writing funny commercials for MTV. So this is like the early aughts.
Right.
And Tom Sharpling went on to be a executive producer at the show Monk.
Oh yeah.
So he wrote and was on board for the entire run of the show. And so he got me a gig writing an episode, which was really fun. And I've written for some Adult Swim shows over the years, and gotten to act in some things. So it's all kind of like music's the main thing, but I love having this other stuff. And we still do the best show every Tuesday, and that's sort of my main creative outlet.
Right.
Like in terms of like me doing
It's just
what
silly,
I like to do.
silly.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But it's great because like I feel like all my dreams came true. I don't really have a boss. And like I have like good jobs. Yeah, it's amazing. So it's like I have nothing to complain about.
Yeah, no. we should all be so lucky as to get to the level, you know, of
but so
achieve.
But the comedy thing, yeah, I feel like Tom and I, maybe me more than Tom, because Tom definitely did have aspirations, but I felt like, God, how did we end up on the couch at Seth Meyers? You know, like it's nuts. So
wow.
All good.
Do you have anything you'd like to plug? Not that I have a giant fan base, but it could be growing.
Mountain Goats are always doing stuff. We're going to go to Europe in a month.
Wow. Nice.
First time in forever. I'm going to go see Bob Mould play solo tomorrow. I don't know if we have anything coming up as a band or not, but there's always something coming up with Bob and with Superchunk. And Tom and I are always doing the Best Show every Tuesday night on thebestshow.net. Available for your podcast needs the next day, where your podcasts are purchased. That's about it.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I mean, when you're living high on the hog, you don't really want that to change. Yeah,
I wish you could see how buried in junk I am in my house here.
I had to change the camera because like half of the ceiling in my live room is like down.
Right.
Let's not see how hard it is here.
Right.
Oh, John, I really appreciate you taking your time out of your day for this. You are like one of the North Stars I look to as like
appreciate that.
Just getting over the 40 hump as an indie musician, you know.
Well, I do want to say this also. When did this happen? Oh, so in early 2008, my now ex and I moved to Brooklyn, and I thought my pro music years were done. Like I thought I was going to become like some kind of writer for a show or something up there. And somehow music just pulled me back. It was almost like music wasn't done with me.
Right.
And so I say this just to say, I thought I was completely done with music, but you're never done.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
there's always something will always come up, and it's always just be looking for those opportunities. Yeah, because they're out there.
Yeah,
no matter how old you are.
I couldn't picture a day where I at least didn't think about like performing music or something. There's always something musically that's like,
right.
There's your charge. That's what is going to get you through the day. Is this whatever? So I guess I know it seems a lot of drummers when they're done maybe with the touring life. Did you ever think about maybe going into like a producer role or anything? Is that something that's good for you?
It's interesting because I did go to school for that.
Okay.
But it was very short. It was like a month-long course.
Yeah.
It would have been like 85, and it was in this tiny town in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned basics, but the main thing I learned there was that I liked playing a lot more than being behind the board. Yeah. So it's almost like with teaching. I wouldn't know how to teach, but like my maybe my attention span is not what where it should be for that. Like with Bob Mould, we do these records with this engineer who's awesome named Bo Sorensen. And I'm just in awe of his ability to not look at his phone, even though the phone is right here. Like he never looks at it, and he's just focused on whatever we're doing for 100 times in a row. It's nuts. So I'm not wired like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it the other day, and it seemed like a lot of drummers kind of extend their career by doing that. And I was trying to figure out sort of in my own head why. And the only thing I could come up with was, besides piano players, I think drummers are the only other ones that use the whole EQ spectrum.
Oh, that's interesting.
You know,
Yeah,
from the
I can see
bass
that.
drum through the cymbals. So
Right.
they kind of have to always worry about, you know, mixing and making sure their hands are the same volume, and
Yeah,
you know, maybe it's
that's
just
true.
stuff through like, oh, they have maybe a more than a guitar player who's just thinking about like 2.5 octaves or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's
A lot
just
of sense.
something that I've been thinking about, and I'm probably going to ask every single person that does the podcast about it. But that was just
Yeah,
my theory of it was, it's no, you know, kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
Like,
and
the best ear in the band.
yeah, and it's interesting. The Mountain Goats, we just we were on tour. We had a day off in Austin, and we went into this little studio to record just a song, just to see what it would sound like. And yeah, I found myself, because it was a pretty small room, having to do just that, like just kind of like,
Adjust.
all right, this hand shouldn't be that loud because that guy's right there and his amp is right there, you know. So
There's too much.
maybe there's a lot more things to be considered sonically for a drummer.
I think that's what I came up with, and it just seems to be like the most, I guess, the best argument for it is. But I get that it could be very tedious having a, you know, if you're a player and you're in a situation where you're not the guy that gets to play,
right?
Be like, I can do this. Let me do this, you know.
Yeah. Well, that was the great thing about Jordan, was that there wasn't a moment
right
where he. I mean, like I was probably 22 or 3, or so, like really young, and I've recorded before, but like, you know, not in these circumstances. So just you know, he was so what's the word I'm looking for? Non-obtrusive, I guess, and you know, just so supportive. And I remember hearing Kenny Aronoff talk about being replaced, like when he joined Mellencamp's band.
Oh yeah.
And I think Steve Cropper was the producer, and he just didn't have what Steve wanted. Like he was like kind of a fusion-y kind of guy, I guess.
Yeah.
Kenny. And so, you know, John Mellencamp is
more
pretty stripped down.
Yeah.
And so there's a great article. It was in Modern Drummer about just him talking about, you know, he was like shocked that he wasn't able to play on this record, but he said, I'm going to stay here and see what I need to do, like what I'm not doing. And that made all the difference in the world.
Probably the smartest career move he made.
Yeah.
Because I think if he leaves that room, as good as anybody could be, you might get forgotten about.
Right.
You know what I mean? But the fact that he had that thing where he could check his ego at the door and just be like, all right, I can get better, clearly.
Yeah. And he is the sound of John Mellencamp as far as I'm concerned.
Some of that stuff.
Snare drum, just
not. One fill, I can't get my head around that famous fill he has. It's like,
oh yeah. Have you read his book?
No. Is it good?
He talked about the fill. It's I
saw it.
Jack and Diane.
Jack and Diane. I saw an interview.
Oh no, it's in that movie. It's in Hired Gun. That's what it is.
Right.
That's what it is.
And he's talking about the walk from like the board to his drum set. And it's like, if you fuck this up.
Yeah. And it's such a weird thing, but it's so good too.
And that's the thing. It's like this offbeat sort of Bill Collins-esque. John, I can't thank you enough. I will thank you a billion more times. Are you an East Coast guy now?
Yeah, where do you live?
I'm in Jersey.
Oh, rats! Superchunk just played Atlantic City at that what's it called?
The fest down there.
Frantic City, in Atlantic City.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry.
I don't play Jersey much, but that.
So it's getting harder to find venues. There's a couple big ones around, but it's sort of like either you're going to be outside Philly or outside of New York. You know.
Yeah. White Eagle Hall, we play a bunch.
Okay.
Yeah, in
Jersey
City.
Jersey City.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
Of
I'm
course.
sure an hour is a lot, but I appreciate you
Absolutely.
being here, man.
My pleasure. Thank you for reaching out. I appreciate it.